To episode 133 of the Postmodern Polymath Podcast. I'm your intrepid host, Chris. God only knows if Lyman's going to show up or not, but it's always a treat when he does. But today, the excuse is allergies that are giving him a migraine. I don't know. He must have a list he goes by. I don't know. I don't keep track. Anyway, this week I have somebody on that I think's pretty fucking awesome. I was on his show 3 weeks ago. I don't remember now. And it's not your grandmother's book club, and we talked about a Glenn Beck book, a chapter in the Glenn, or part of it, the Glenn Beck book, and I thought it was fucking funny as fuck. Oh yeah, and a long time ago I was on their show. I co-hosted, I think, as a guest host. Anyway, without further ado, may I present to you Kevin. How's it going, Kevin?
Hello and welcome to the Postmodern. Sorry, I go on autopilot when I start a show. I can't help it; it just sort of pops out of my mouth. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
I just thought you do have like a radio person's voice or whatever.
Oh, you know? I get that so often. I get that from people who don't even know I have a show, and I have to make that quick decision of: do I want to be? Can I swear on this show?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Do I want to be a douchebag and say, oh, well, actually, I have a podcast? Or do I want to just go, yeah, I hear that. It's a deep voice. I used to smoke. It's a thing.
Yeah, smoking. I quit 12 years ago, I think.
Oh, man. I was, so before I went to college, I was a mechanic. I was a tractor mechanic for about 5 years. And there's nothing to do all day except chain smoke. And so that's all I did. And I swear, I think my voice was already deep before that, but definitely I think the smoking got me into that sweet spot where I have the nice, it smoothed everything out a little bit, got rid of the crackles. So kids, you heard it from me first. Smoke for a little bit when you're younger.
For a little bit.
But no more menthols now.
Oh, yeah. Trying to get rid of menthols. So, yeah, I wanted to have you on, not just as a home and home, as it were, because I was on your show. And I thought I'd have y'all in mind, but also because I like the format of your new show, because I know you had the other one, but I like this format because it's more focused, and generally that gets more play. It was good. I'm saying that was a good strategic move.
I agree. It was too. I mean, me and Benedict, who's my co-host, right? We started out a long time. We've been podcasting together for about 6 years now. And I don't remember we had you on way back in the day on our old show.
On the old show, yeah.
And that was just a weekly, two white guys covering the news, thinking anyone cares about their opinion show. We were originally connected to a small news startup that has since just flopped, and we separated along the way. But we started doing the book review segment as the last segment of our show somewhere along the way, because I ran across Dinesh D'Souza's The Big Lie, Exposing the Nazi Roots of the American Left. Real title. I didn't make a word of that up.
Oh, Dinesh.
And I saw that, and I grew up in California, in Sacramento, and I was a very right-wing youth. I was alt-right before anyone had that word. So I took a hard right in high school, and it sort of plays into how I ended up being a mechanic to begin with. But so I had read a lot of that sort of stuff when I was growing up. The book we're doing right now, which is a Glenn Beck book called Arguing with Socialists, I had read when I was young the first book in that series that he did, which was called Arguing with Idiots.
On purpose.
On purpose. I bought it because I thought, because at the time, Glenn Beck was on Fox News. He was the big thing, right? And I thought, oh, this guy knows his stuff, because I've seen him talk on TV. So he must know his stuff, right? And so I read it, thought it was wonderful. It was, climate change denial. It's essentially the same thing we're getting in this new book, but less focused, and focusing on trashing the people who were popular around 2010 on the left, right? Because he has new boogeymen now. So, but that made me really think, when I got into this space of doing this podcast with Benedict, this is something that could be really interesting. Because there's plenty of shows out there that cover all sorts of right-wing media, right? That cover all the videos of the daily news or the opinion shows on Fox and Newsmax and all those sorts of things. You have Right Wing Watch out there, all the various outlets that do that stuff. But I didn't see a whole lot of people who are covering books. And I thought this could be something. It's a nice little niche to get into. And in my mind, it should be the place, if all things were right, where right-wing intelligentsia, as they are, or whatever they may exist as, in whatever form, that's where they put down the good arguments, right? That's where they're able to, they provide all their citations. They give you the evidence. It should happen in the books because they have many more pages, much more space to do it in. And I have found that it is exactly what you'd expect, and they provide absolutely none of that.
Yeah, it's straw men galore, basically. And
absolutely. I mean, I will say that part of the fun of it, because I truly love it. I love reading right-wing material. I have a perverse addiction to it. Part of it is probably me reflecting on the fact that I would have loved this stuff back in the day. I would have believed it whole hog. But part of what we get is we get these weird glimpses into things that maybe I wasn't familiar with because they're not out there on Fox News. They're even a little bit too extreme for Fox News. And over time, they sort of make their way over, and I see them bleeding into other right-wing figures, right? Like Dinesh D'Souza, his big thing was the left are really the Nazis, the fascists. And he meant that literally. Like at one point in that book, he said basically Nazism and American progressivism are essentially the same, is really his argument, because he doesn't know a goddamn thing.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
But so we get to see these extreme little bits of what pops out, right? And so this, so far, I think we're on our 5th or 6th book that we've done on the show. And so we've done Dinesh D'Souza. We did 2 writers from the Christian Broadcasting Network who did a Donald Trump book called The Faith of Donald J. Trump, a spiritual biography.
It was like nothing. The end.
No, we did Donald Trump Jr.'s book, which was something, and we did of course a book about how the Russia investigation was all a hoax, and now we're on to we did Ben Shapiro's what's his magnum doofus called, The Right Side of History. Which everyone with a conservative dad knows from their bookshelf. And now, of course, the Glenn Beck book. So that's what we've been through so far.
Yeah. Like I said, that's a great idea. And I have a thing for hate watching movies by those same types, or shows that like I watch Majority Report, and they always shit on Rubin and Shapiro and all those fucking white dude bros who play out the whole anti-woke bullshit, But I can imagine, like I said on the when I was on there, we were reading something from that book. It was just, you're right. It was just the same old bullshit. I mean, there wasn't anything any different. It was just more of a different format, basically, is what it was. Yeah,
and you get sucked into, at least I do, anyways, this desire for the real crazy to come out, right? And so it's like being an ex-heroin addict just chasing the dragon, right? Trying to find that next hit of crazy. And we haven't really found it since Dinesh. It's hard to find anything crazier than Dinesh D'Souza straight-faced saying AOC is the same as Adolf, right? Bernie Sanders and Adolf Hitler are the same thing. It's hard to find anything crazier than that, but we keep looking.
Yeah, I saw that his magnum opus, Death of a Nation, or whatever the fuck it is.
Oh, that movie. We watched that too. We watched that for the show way back when, and did an episode on it with Thomas Smith and Aaron Rabinowitz. From all the shows they do. I'm sure your listeners are familiar. And that movie is outstanding. It's absolutely amazing.
I watched it in the theater.
I remember you told me you saw it in the theater.
That's right, I did tell you.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
In the South. With some old Christian lady sitting right next to us.
I'm sure you had people who were cheering and just loving it.
Well, they were all 100 years old, so they could barely,
well, they were expunging dust into the air, at least.
Well, the one next to us got mad because we laughed. We were laughing in the wrong places.
Oh yeah, you can't help but laugh during that movie. And we watched his most recent movie too, He did a second
Oh,
one, which came out, I don't know, about 8 or 9 months ago, which we did with Morgan Stringer, who works for Andrew Torres.
yeah, Morgan. Yeah.
And that one's it's not as it doesn't hit as hard. It's like, I keep going back to the heroin analogy, but it's like you need to up the dose every time because it's just not hitting as hard because a lot of it's the
Yeah.
same old retread.
Yep, that's true. I'm trying to remember. I think I watched it. I can't remember the name of it because it wasn't that memorable. I think it just came out online only because the COVID thing. I don't think it.
I
Ever
mean,
came
it
out.
had some great crazy in there, right? It had the lunatic who claims that he blew Obama in a bath or in a limo, and Obama came back for more, right? This crazy dude who is a
Oh,
just total full of shit nutbag. It had that crazy imam from Australia who has like 5 followers, but is the right's favorite uh, Muslim in the universe. That I can't. Imam Tawhidi, that guy. He's in it and claiming that Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar are just Iranian spies and shit. It's nutso. It's got some wonderful stuff on those fronts.
I'm gonna have to go see if I watch it. I may have not because
You
I
need to go
kept
see
waiting
if you
for
can
it to
watch it
come
for
out.
free. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not paying for it. No.
Yes,
I
yes, I do. Right, because we have to get these things early, right? And that's one of the things. I always feel bad about paying for the books or the movies or whatever. So we always try and donate to a good cause that whoever the author is would hate
Yeah.
to make up
Right.
for it. But still, you feel a little bit bad when you're giving them any little bit of money whatsoever.
Yeah, I get a little shit when I went to see it in the theater, but I do give to a lot of different organizations. So it's not like, and they're going to get that damn money anyway. I mean,
Yeah, that's true.
they have a captive audience in the church mostly.
Yeah, I mean it's a big connection. A lot of these things do, like if they do documentaries and stuff. I know Dinesh's first documentary did a big tour of churches in the United States because when I was looking into it, I went to like all the promotional website and everything, and they had things to set up, right, a discounted show in your church, a discounted showing for your church audience, right, like they always do, because these things aren't really about making money, although they do make an obscene amount of money for how
Obscene.
ridiculous they are. They're about promoting an ideology, right? In the United States, we have this political religion on the right, which is really, I'd say, as much as I agree with people like Christy Stroop, who are like, don't say there's such a thing as like wrong Christianity. The political religion of the right, I think, incorporates more of conservatism and republicanism than it does the Christianity component of it. In as much as it's over the years, over the decades, and Kevin Cruz, the historian, has written a lot about this. The Republican Party has spent a massive amount of time, energy, and money in crafting right-wing evangelicalism in the United States so that it serves their political ends.
Yep. I mean, there's nothing to add to that. You're absolutely correct. I remember Noah came on. Let me name drop a little bit. Came on like a while, over a year ago, probably. He was talking about, they do GAM, and he was talking about how they go to churches. Like they go to churches and screen these films, and of course they're going to watch them no matter how bad they are, because it's like part of the ideology. It's like you're basically it's virtue signaling, really, is what it is.
It's whatever the opposite of virtue signal. It's vice signaling.
Oh.
Vice signaling,
Yeah,
I
okay,
think
yeah.
is a better term.
Well,
for it.
I guess it depends on your point of view. From their point of view, of course, it's virtue signaling, I guess.
Right.
But for our, obviously it's vice signaling that you're watching this piece of garbage to own the libs, which is pretty much what everything boils down to, seemingly.
Right, and I think that even that component, that's highlighted so much these days, right? The Republican Party doesn't have a platform. They don't have policy ideas. They don't have a governance strategy. They just have owning the libs and lower taxes. That's all they have. And that's not a governing strategy by any stretch of the words, right? There was that big story that came out over the last day or two, I think, about someone who wrote an opinion piece saying the reason I'm not getting the vaccine is because the libs will go crazy over it, which is absolute fucking nonsense, obviously. But they really do think like that, right? My dad is still a conservative. And whenever I end up spending time with him, as much as I, living all the way across the country from him, get to avoid that as much as possible. He uses that sort of phrasing. He uses those sort of terms, and he really does talk about how his desire and what he values is in making the other side angry or mad or whatever he thinks he's making them through his actions.
Yeah, it's really, and you're right. Basically, it's trickle down economics. It's just that's all it's been for.
Mm-hmm.
What it boils down to is corporate ownership of every, kiss corporations' ass and own the libs.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say the Kiss Corporation owns everything, but no, they just want to rock and roll all night.
They are good business. Gene
and
Simmons
sell every product under the sun. Yeah.
He's branded the fuck out of everything. I'll give that to him. I can't stand him, but he knows how to get his brand sold. I'll give him that. I kind of wanted, we talked about before you came on here about kind of one of the issues I wanted to discuss with you, since it's sort of a law issue, I guess. These laws that are being passed throughout the country, specifically the one that's been on the news most lately is the Georgia laws that have been passed, voter suppression laws. And these aren't, I looked into it, and the three biggest states that have passed the most laws are Georgia, Texas, and Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are the things that these three states might have in common? Arizona flipped, Georgia flipped, Texas is gonna flip soon, no matter what they're gonna do everything they can to keep the brown people from voting, and that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. So obviously those three states are under the most blue pressure, right? From flipping, whether they're going to Georgia, right? It may have been a fluke that the two Senate races went blue. It certainly shows they're a much more competitive state than they ever have been in the past. And I should obviously say, right, don't take legal advice from a podcast or a show or anything. I'm not yet a lawyer. I am in law school, but don't take any legal advice, right? I did study political science in undergrad at UC Berkeley, though. So give myself all that cred, plus name drop.
Fancy, ma'am.
I was just going to use it to say, fuck Stanford. But anyways, I got to say that as much as I possibly can everywhere I go. Those old rivalries never die. But the big thing that's going on in Georgia, right? Obviously, this is all response to the 2020 election. These states, primarily, they're controlled by Republicans in the state houses, their senates, whatever their orientation may be, however they're set up. And certainly they want to avoid seeing Democrats win in their state. What that translates to in their state, as you said correctly, is preventing as many minorities from voting as possible, right? And so the Georgia bill, which is the one that's gotten the most press, a lot of people have talked about it. There are some components in there that are rather mundane, but there are a lot of things in there that you can see are these thinly veiled efforts to prevent as many African Americans, particularly in Atlanta and the big cities, from voting as possible. All right, so there's things in there like restrictions on the number of drop boxes that are available. And those drop boxes are limited to a specific number per 100,000 people, or the number of voting precincts in the area, right? And so it's the lesser of the two. They actually go with the lesser of the two in an attempt to keep them as limited as possible and limit the availability of people being able to drop off ballots in a convenient manner. And there's no legitimate, security function to something like that. All these ballots can be traced back to the individual whose name, address, other information is on them. But apparently Republicans want to pretend as though this isn't a very obvious effort to make it harder to get your vote counted. And the reason why it's particularly egregious is under the arrangement that they put into this new law that they put forward, rural areas with very small populations will have a massive number of drop boxes per population. So even if it's a county that only has 1,000 people, they'll have one drop box. Whereas you have Fulton County, which I don't know the population off the top of my head, but it's several hundreds of thousands, they'll be limited to about 20 drop boxes. So it's ridiculous on those fronts. It's very plain what they're trying to doing is get their voters to the polls while preventing primarily African American Democratic voters from being able to vote. Right.
So if you, you're right. I looked at the bill, the omnibus bill. It was a number of different. I think it was like 9 different things, and yeah, not all of them were like that. A couple of them actually they increased early voting in rural counties, which is interesting.
In rural counties, it counts most in rural counties. The one you're thinking of, which in particular, what that did was they added an additional mandatory day of early voting on a Saturday.
Yes.
And previously, the law had only required 1 day of Saturday early voting. Now it requires 2. The reason why it matters is that's going to increase the amount that rural counties do, because rural counties throughout the state have primarily in the past only had that 1 day of early voting because they have a much smaller number of people in the counties. They don't need to have that early voting open as much in order to enable to get everyone in to vote. Whereas in places like Fulton County, it's been discretionary. They've had many more days of early voting available than the prescribed by law 1 day of early voting. So it's not an attempt that's negative. And I would never challenge that portion of the bill. I would actually say, go ahead and do that. All right. Because the end goal is to get as many people in to vote as possible. And that's what I would say sets apart what the obvious things that Republicans are doing to try and prevent people from voting, versus the things that Democrats are doing to try and get people to vote, right? On the left, you have an attempt to actually get more people to vote, and it doesn't matter who benefits. Everyone will have an increased access to the vote. Republicans, when they increase access to the vote, it is focused on their people and very much to the generally to the deficit of people who don't vote for them.
Well, one of the things that was kind of fucked up, worrisome was the state can take control of certain, if they don't like, I guess if they don't like the outcome of a certain county, they took it out of the hands of the Secretary of State and they're electing some board or something. And, ostensibly it's supposed to be bipartisan. The head of the board is supposed to be bipartisan. But, I don't know how true that is. Obviously, it's a Republican state.
Yeah, so there's 2 different things going on there, right? The first one is that they removed the Secretary of State as a voting member of the state election board. And that's, in my mind, pretty clearly just a fuck you to Brad Raffensperger, who obviously they're mad at for not overturning the will of the people in the last election. So I think that's a pretty clear, just straight up fuck you, Brad, that they're putting in there. The other one that you're talking about is that they increased the ability of the legislature, like you said, to remove county election board officials. And that's one that's a bit more worrisome, obviously, right? So because this state election board is under the direct control of the legislature now, having the different appointment regime that they put in place, they have much more control over the state election board, obviously. And they have to, I will say, to be fair, that there are restrictions on when and how many county or municipal election officials they can suspend. So in order to suspend them, they have to have, I think I remember it was either 3 or 4 serious infractions under the election code, which, to be fair, that's a reasonable protective measure. And they can only suspend up to 4 at any given time. So once they've gotten rid of 4, they're done. Thing is, it's also another thing that seems pretty clearly aimed at Fulton County, which is where Atlanta is. Because if they were to suspend 4 election officials from Fulton County and put in whoever they want, they'd have control over what was going on there.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting how they try to couch it a little bit, a veneer of kind of legitimacy or whatever, and a little bit to offset some of the blatantly, laws that are blatantly voter suppression. Like giving food and drinks. What's happening? Maybe if you didn't have lines out 3 hours long, people wouldn't have to do that.
Right. And here's the thing: since the Supreme Court crippled the Voting Rights Act in 2016 with Shelby County v. Holder, the amount of precincts in African-American areas of the South, Atlanta very much included, Fulton County, have dropped precipitously as Republican-led states have cut the number of precincts that are available to go vote, which leads to those long lines. They already had long lines to begin with because these are cities. Cities have more people, but they've cut, I think the number is in the 200s of the number of election precincts, voting locations they have cut in the state of Georgia, the majority of them being in primarily African-American areas. No surprise whatsoever there. And if you bring these sorts of things up, they'll claim that it's, well, we're just going after Democratic voters, not African-American voters. Oh. Fuck you. This is the South, motherfucker. We know what you mean.
Yeah, really. I mean,
but the food and water thing is pretty goddamn blatant because there's no reasonable justification for that, right? I think what people would, if they were to try, if I'm going to steel man for them, right? If they were to try and justify that, they would say that it's a form of electioneering, where giving out food and water is encouraging someone to vote in a particular way, in which case, prove it, motherfucker. Make it a crime to give someone food and water in exchange for voting in a certain way, or to wear election-related apparel for a certain candidate or party or position when you're out there giving food and water. But there's really no reasonable justification for banning someone from giving someone food and water when they're simply waiting in line to vote. It's another one of those things. It benefits everyone. As long as you're giving it out to everyone who's in that line, regardless, and you don't know who they're going to vote for, they're just standing in line, right? If you're giving it out to everyone, there's no way you can possibly deem that to be something that needs to be banned to protect elections in some ridiculous way.
Yeah. Well, of course, the assumption is, like you said, the reason the lines are so long are in the cities. Well, the cities are going to be overwhelmingly Democratic.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, obviously, it's pretty obvious they're trying to target,
right?
Like you said, I mean, Democratic voters, but you're screwing yourself in a lot of ways when you do shit like that, to be honest.
Well, but like you said, right, they know. The people who enacted this law know. And the reason why this was another thing that Florida's trying to do, I think it came up in Arizona. I think it also is in one of the proposed bills in Texas right now. The reason why they're doing this is they very much know that they have longer lines in areas that are blue, which would be the cities, which would be the places that are minority heavy. And a lot of that is, again, related to tactics they've already engaged in to remove the amount of voting locations that are available there. And they know that if we make it less comfortable to stand in line in the hot sun, I think in the June primary in Georgia, it was in the 80 degrees range up there. And I think it was raining on election night in November in Georgia. So all these situations, it's all about, and Ben Shapiro had this ridiculous fucking tweet the other day where he said something about long lines don't keep everyone from riding rides at Disneyland. It's like, fuck you. That's why they have Fast Pass, you dipshit. They literally have Fast Pass because of the long fucking lines. And because people don't want to wait in lines.
Last time I checked, Disney isn't enshrined in our democracy as a
right. It's also not a right to ride on the I can't remember the name of any Disney rides. Space Mountain. It's not. It's not a constitutional right to ride on Space Mountain. As much as I may wish it was, we can't get that in. We're working on it. AOC has a new slate of constitutional amendments that are coming up. We're lobbying to get it in there. We're seizing the means of fun. Seizing the means of fun. That's my new slogan.
Fun production. I mean,
but right. So obviously these things are aimed at making the experience of voting more miserable. All the attempts at making lines longer. Someone pulls up at a precinct and sees that the line stretches down 2 blocks. They're going to, many people will stay and vote, but many more will say, I'm going to go home. It's not worth standing in line for an hour and a half. Especially when you live in a place where you usually know it's going to vote one way or the other. So it usually it's a sort of thing that sends people home, and making the experience more miserable by not allowing someone to hand them a free bottle of water or Jose Andres to give them a cheeseburger. Right? It's ridiculous and just so blatant.
So every time they do this, and I want people who are not in the South, from the South, to realize that black people, well, you already knew this anyway, but especially here, black people have bled and died for civil rights in this country, right? And they will go through everything to vote. They will fucking, if they had to, they would crawl. They will wait in line forever because they know what it's like to not vote. Or a lot of them, their mothers or fathers or grandfathers. Hell, your great grandfather was a slave, maybe, right? So they know and they understand the importance of voting, right? So every time they do shit like this, they are basically in they're making it worse on themselves because eventually, no matter what you crackers try to do, you're gonna be the minority, okay? And they're fighting that tooth and nail. And the more you try to fucking do this kind of pass these kind of voter suppression laws, especially in the South, the more they're gonna fucking come out. And Stacey Abrams, you fuck around and you find out. You're going to find out once more that she's going to pull this shit off. Okay. That's what their mistake, their strategic mistake. They just don't have the brain trust to fucking pull shit like this off. Yeah.
Well, I do often wonder, right, when's the breaking point? Because we've seen in my lifetime, there's only been one election that a national election that a Republican has won, right? Bush's second election, Bush's Iraq War election. He got the popular vote. By win, I mean get the popular vote. That's what I was referring to.
Wait, how old are you?
I'm 29 years old.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Right?
Okay. Just gone, child.
Yeah. But I know I wasn't there for Reagan, but in my lifetime, Republicans have only won the popular vote once, and that was Bush's second election. I do wonder, when will there be a breaking point? Is it when we hit where elections are going 60-40 to Democrats and Republicans are still winning, getting control of the Senate, the House, and the presidency? Is it when we get to 65-35? At what point will people just say, fuck it, burn this motherfucker down? We're living under the control of a minority who have ensconced themselves in power through writing laws that give themselves an unfair advantage. At what point do people just say, fuck it with that?
Well, you're going to start seeing more of that, I think, with the millennials. Well, not millennials, the Zoomers or whatever the fucking new one is.
Well, I mean, the good news is obviously young people skew heavily away from the Republican Party. So there's good news on that front. So long term, I think, right, we're just going to see shifts where the Republican Party becomes less and less important, less and less. Nobody's going to give a shit about him anymore. Eventually, that's my hope. But the fact that they've managed to cling on to half of the fucking Senate is not a good sign for things going anywhere quickly.
Well, it's going to get worse before it gets better because they know they're on the verge of losing shit, and cornered right is going to, it's a bad get them in the corner. They're doing what they're doing now. Basically, they're going to do everything they can to hold on to power, and I don't know what that's going to mean. How far they're going to go with that. Obviously, we have they support Trump, who apparently is cool with insurrections as long as it's his supporters or whatever.
Yeah. And, I've for a long time avoided just using, calling them fascists, straight up fascists, every single one of them on the right. I held out on that for like 2.5 years through Trump's term. And then, so much had come down on me that now, after the insurrection, with the majority of the Republican Party, based on all polls we've seen, not having a problem with that, I'm fine with just calling them straight up fascists. Because you don't get any closer to it than a failed beer hall putsch, right? You don't get any fucking closer than trying to overthrow our government and failing because they're sad and pathetic. They're really such fucking pathetic douchebags.
Well, they really are, and it's harder to get away with stuff like that nowadays with this much media, the internet. Of course, back in Nazi Germany, you could control the press, really. You had Goebbels controlling all the media, and there wasn't much. You had a newspaper, basically, is what you got. Now you got it everywhere. You're not going to be able to suppress all the things. You're not going to be able to. They're doing their best to try to skew it so ridiculously far right that they keep them in a bubble with OAN, Fox News, etc.
Don't you dare attack my beloved OAN. It is the news site I watch most often these days.
It's Yeah, you can't.
I
Fox
really
News is,
do. I really do watch OAN more than anything else. But that's again, it's mostly hate watching for me.
I hate. Yeah, right. I mean, Fox News has become so milk toast now. It's so passe. Now you got to go to OAN because it's more extreme.
I see that on some fronts, right? Where they've faced a lot of heavy criticism in recent years and had to tone things down some. But on other fronts, I think when you look at like Tucker Carlson, for instance,
Oh God.
he is the closest to an open white nationalist we have ever had, hosting a live primetime talk show on television. I'm sure some of those old guys back in the 60s were white supremacists. We just didn't know it. But, Tucker comes right up to the line of just out and out saying it. He really does.
He just keeps getting crazier.
Well, and here's the thing. I can put myself into the mindset of, Tucker Carlson was on the air back when I was in that phase, back when I was a right winger. He didn't have a regular show, but he was a regular guest on a lot of the shows. And I think he might have been on CNN at the time, back when he had that show where there was a couple other people on it.
Crossfire.
Yes, that one. But right, I remember growing up every single night, every fucking night, it was Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, and Bill O'Reilly. I'm so glad I almost forgot his name. I'm so glad he's almost that irrelevant that I can forget Bill O'Reilly's name. But every fucking night, Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Bill O'Reilly. They were the trio. We watched that as a family, like religion.
I've heard that before, yeah.
It watches
family.
Yeah, and it's creepy thinking about it now because my dad was a huge Bill O'Reilly guy. I, being the young, and I was much more openly racist than my parents, because growing up as a young white conservative in California, we didn't have political examples to look up to. This is a whole side story I'm going into out of nowhere, but so the ideal that we looking for what we should behave like, what we should think, what we should act like, was this hyper internet-based version of what a Southerner was, right? Our idea of what it meant to be conservative came from trolls posting racism on the internet.
You're welcome.
Yes. And I based so much of my own persona on that when I was young. And it's, looking back, I'm terribly ashamed of myself, obviously, right? The N-word was a regular part of my vocabulary. We wanted to be racist. We found a way to be racist because it's what we wanted. It's hard to describe how strange that is to think about looking back now. But a lot of that, being in that headspace, looking for that kind of thing, Glenn Beck was the guy you looked to. Glenn Beck was the guy out there who was throwing out all the dog whistles, who was throwing out all the buzzwords, who was basically watching Alex Jones every day and picking out the best bits to put onto his program. That's basically what Glenn was. He was the funnel for all that white nationalist, barely couched language that could be fed right into the American people. Right. And remember, he came around right around the time of Obama. That's when he hit his stride. So, of course, it's no surprise that the racist rhetoric would be amping up at that time as well. That was the focus of the right wing for many years, was to focus on the racist shit. It's how we ended up with Donald Trump, for fuck's sake. Right. So, but anyways, we had that holy trinity. That's what I'm talking about. And it's you can't understate the impact that Fox News has had on right-wing thought. I don't know to what extent it's transitioning to anything else these days, because all of the mainstream Republican voters that I know, certainly my family, my ex-girlfriend's family who lives in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, when I was there over the holidays, it was just nonstop Fox News on the TV. And they're QAnon believers. And even they didn't go to OAN and Newsmax, because they recognize that there's no talent, that there's no quality there. It's just garbage, right? So Fox News still has the polish. It has the veneer of respectability, and they can cling to that as though it's a legitimate outlet for getting news through. While at the same time, it is, I'll agree with what you're saying earlier, there's social media circles where they're being more radicalized, or to a greater extent being radicalized and being fed the real disinformation that's forming their worldviews, that then Fox News doesn't say out loud, but preys upon the fact that they've been put into that mindset.
Well, they don't have to. I mean, They've already got it pre-packaged, like you said.
Right.
I mean, through the social media. I hear Parler's coming back. Probably some fucking Russian troll farm bought it. I don't fucking know.
Oh, are you not already signed up for Frank's speech? Is that?
That was the next thing I was going to say. I need to go watch that. The second one, the second of his trilogy. I don't know if this is going to be a trilogy.
Oh, I
But
hope
the
it's a
second
trilogy.
yeah.
I hope it's a trilogy. I'm waiting on episode 7. Episode 6. Why did I say 7? Episode 6.
Drugs,
We're waiting
probably.
on.
It's drugs.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping we get some Ewoks in the last one.
So yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. He's ridiculous. I'm gonna go see if you can get on Frank. I don't even know if if it's a thing. If he's even really trying, or I can't imagine he's any good at shit like that.
Oh no. I mean, you have to strike the former crackhead from his name, right? And that's not a joke on addiction. Oh, you don't know Mike Lindell's story? Mike Lindell is supposedly a former crackhead who started a pillow company. That's his whole backstory. You can read about it. He had a legitimate crack addiction. I don't believe the had part, and I mean that legitimately, not just as a way to make fun of the guy for being a piece of shit. If you look at him talk for any amount of time, I've lived with people who were doing a lot of cocaine. I know what it looks like to be on that. I'm pretty sure he's still smoking crack.
You can afford it.
But anyways, I was going to say, I was on frankspeech.com earlier today.
Oh, you were?
It is as of right now just basically a blank WordPress page with 2 thumbnail videos inserted that you can watch.
So yeah, he doesn't.
No, he's no good at technology. He doesn't know what the fuck he's doing.
Well, he's already driven away any support. They all think, even the fucking hardcore ones think he's crazy now. I mean, especially after OAN had to put a fucking disclaimer.
Oh God.
Because they got sued by that voting company or whatever.
Well, and I think even after that, they put his second documentary out. Even after the whole debacle with the first one and the lawsuits and everything, I think they still let him put the second one out through OAN.
But he's so crazy. He's so far gone. He doesn't have any support as far as I can see. Even Trump, he's disappeared.
Well, people like that, right? There's a fringe, and you work your way out from the fringe to the center. The thing is, the fringe has come much closer to the center. And the fringe is still extended to people who are even crazier, but what was fringe has come much closer to what's normal in the Republican Party these days, right? When I was young, what was fringe was Bill Cooper and Alex Jones and shit like that, right? And Michael Savage was even a little bit on the fringe. He wasn't too far out there, but he was a little bit fringe. I love Michael Savage. Huge fan of the Savage Nation. But I listened to him every fucking day, man. I listened to Michael Savage every goddamn day because that was right. His show right before he got canceled or dropped his contract, whatever, is right around the time I was a mechanic, and I had a 45-minute drive to and from work every day. So after I got off work, it was Michael Savage, and then I think Sean Hannity, and then I'd get home and I would go online and listen to the replay of Rush's show. That was my daily routine. That was where I got information from. So you can imagine how bad it is when you're in that kind of space. And these days, since radio is really no longer a thing and everything's coming through YouTube and podcasts and all these other different forms of media, it's democratized the crazy. It's democratized the ability to make money off of being a lying asshole. So there's so much more out there that on the Republican side, right, it's pushed everything from the fringe towards the center. You still have Alex Jones out there on the fringe, but he's no longer the fringe of the fringe. Yeah, there are people crazier than him.
Yeah, he's not that crazy anymore.
Really isn't.
Compared to other, there's probably people out there I have no idea about because I don't necessarily delve that deep into it.
Oh, man. Nick Fuentes, you ever heard of him?
See, I don't have any idea.
Little white supremacist kid who just does a show just like yours, where he just sits in front of a green screen and talks to people. Actually, he got kicked off YouTube, so he's not on YouTube anymore. But, averages, I think last time I checked before he got kicked off YouTube, it was something like 15 to 20,000 views per show. And the kid was at the insurrection. He's the one who's been claiming got put on the no-fly list over the last couple of days. He's an
yeah.
open little white supremacist prick. He's now in the Alex Jones sphere. He hangs out with him. He's done interviews with Milo Yiannopoulos where he said he's against miscegenation, shit like that. And what's concerning to me is that sort of open white supremacism making its way from the fringe to the center. Where back in the day, I knew, because I had those beliefs, that I couldn't say those things out loud, that I had to, hide my power level and shit like that was the sort of terminology. You had to pretend to not be as racist as you actually were. Now they can be much more open and out front with it and get thousands and thousands of followers who support them because of the racism.
Yeah, Trump has really, I think, really brought out the white supremacy. And I think it's an extension of Obama's presidency because, of course, he was a black guy. Oh my God, their heads exploded when he got elected, So, I mean, Trump, of course, was kind of a backlash against Obama, I think. He was there just at the right time, I think. And his election has really, you've seen a spike in these. I mean, you're seeing white supremacy everywhere. It's more open than it's ever been. People can just march around with swastikas and shit all day.
Yep.
Before it was at least somewhat socially unacceptable. Now apparently you can just walk around with, swastikas and fucking. Of course, Confederate flags don't even fucking pretend anymore. That was they don't even pretend. It used to be heritage not hate.
Yep.
Yeah. Now they're not even pretending anymore.
I'm from fucking California and I owned a Confederate flag. What the fuck does that tell you about what it means?
No.
I had a Confederate flag belt buckle. I had a hat. I had a T-shirt. I had all sorts of Confederate flag shit. And it was in large part, to walk around and go, fuck all you. I got my Confederate flag shit. I'm better than you because I guess I'm racist. I don't know. I don't even know really what my motivation was in wearing it, except for the fuck the libs mentality, which back then even was still pretty prevalent.
Well, that's mostly what it is. It's this whole, and what's so funny is they talk about the leftist snowflakes, right? Mm-hmm. All these people complaining about their pronouns and their safe spaces and shit. When they throw a fit, anytime they have to hear anything to do with trans people, they get their heads explode. They can't take it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
I once I live here in DC right now. I've been going to law school for the last couple of years here, and I once was at a cigar bar over by the White House where I ran into a guy named Michael Knowles. Who has a podcast through the Daily Wire and does a podcast with Ted Cruz now.
Oh God.
And I just I was sitting there. It was a long night. I'd been drinking a lot. I was smoking cigars with a buddy. And I heard someone over his table saying something about something stupid and, butted in and somehow got invited into their conversation and got into an argument with him where first off, he said, "Oh, I have a podcast. You might have heard of me." To which if anyone ever says that fuck them. Fuck them.
Yeah,
I would no. Yeah. If I had 1 million listeners to my podcast, I'd never fucking say that to you. But he got just terribly offended by learning I was a fucking atheist talking to him. Terribly fucking offended and spent half an hour trying to convince me to revert back to Catholicism with arguments like, well, the guy who came up with the word Big Bang was a Catholic priest. So right there, it's proof.
Right. Yeah. Okay, bruh.
But no, they get terribly upset, like you were saying. They get their panties all in a twist. They lose their goddamn minds when confronted with the idea that people don't all believe like them. And go into college culture, right? The conservative youth culture is the most pathetic and simultaneously toxic thing I've ever been exposed to. Because when I first went back to college, right, after 5 years as a mechanic, I started in community college. So maybe I was 3.5 years as a mechanic when I started doing night classes. That's the place I was first in, right? Trying to find all the conservatives on campus so I could have camaraderie with them. Because, of course, I wasn't going to listen to all this crap all the liberal teachers were trying to feed me. I was going to prove them all wrong. Every assignment I turned in was going to be showing them how, in fact, everything they say is lies. And then I learned pretty quickly that, there's no indoctrination like I was told to expect. That's all nonsense. But at first I was looking for that sort of camaraderie, and those are the people who melt down faster than anyone I've ever encountered, right? I've sat in a statistics class where I had somebody trying to explain that the wage gap wasn't real, and the professor got so mad about it, they literally spent 45 minutes showing them how their math was wrong just to embarrass them in front of the class, right? And that's like proving someone wrong that shouldn't make you mad. I love to be wrong. I love to challenge the ideas I already hold. I love that sort of thing. Conservatives cannot handle challenging their ideas. And I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad. We had a lot of very well publicized incidents involving our campus Republican club, right? Yep. We had the Milo event. We had the Ben Shapiro event. We had all that shit. We had the various neo-Nazi groups that fucking came to Berkeley to try and start fights, right? Literal neo-Nazi groups, Michigan militia groups, fuckers coming to Berkeley just to get into fights with people in our streets. And the fucking campus Republican group, these just immature children who did not know how to cope, losing their goddamn minds over all of it. So I've never met anybody more fragile than a campus conservative. This is what I'm getting to with that.
Well, yeah, and it's funny. Well, not funny, but I was watching, because I'm a hate watcher, Prager, everybody's favorite.
Oh, love me some PragerU videos. We do them regularly over on our show.
Prager and Adam Carolla.
Oh, God.
He used to be.
It's disappointing to me.
Yeah, he used to be.
I used to like Adam Carolla.
A lot of people did. And he just went batshit.
Well, and here's the thing. I'm a big comedy fan. Like, I've always loved stand-up comedy. I love performing speech, right? I stand-up and so part of me going from being a right-wing shitbag, and I know I interrupted your story. I'm sorry. I'll get back to it. But part of me going from being a right-wing shitbag to being who I am today, right? Fucking Kevin, is comedy, is stand-up comedy. And particularly, I owe Patton Oswalt more than I could ever repay him. Because back in the day, we had this thing called Pandora Radio. Yep. And on there, you couldn't skip tracks unless you paid, like, I don't remember how much a month. It was like $5.99 a month. And I was a cheap ass. I wasn't going to be paying for the premium subscription. So I'd put on, comedy stations. Like, I'd put on the Patton Oswalt station. And Patton has a lot of great bits that are completely apolitical, just funny stuff. But he also does a lot of political comedy and a lot of anti-religious comedy, right? He has the Sky Cake bit, stuff like that. And at the beginning, right, I'd always try and skip over those bits because, like, they made me feel uncomfortable because they were challenging what I believed. When he made fun of George Bush or he made fun of religion, I don't want to listen to that. I can't handle it. But I still liked his other stuff. So I'd skip. I'd run out of skips. And eventually I'd have to listen to it. And when you listen to enough of those tracks over and over and over again on repeat, and there's people like David Cross mixed in there too and stuff, eventually you're able to step back at an ironic distance and go, okay, if I let go of the shit that's making me angry about this, this is really funny. And once you're able to step back and examine that in that fashion, I think you're able to re-examine all those things you were holding inside of you that were holding you back in the first place. You're able to re-examine your own beliefs and ideas. And so, like I say, Patton Oswalt is probably, I would say, the number one reason, other than, a bunch of people I met in community college who, gay people and trans people who I realized weren't the evil demons that right-wing radio told me they were. But Patton Oswalt, I owe a massive debt for getting me over the hump in my life and helping me become a real human being rather than a right-wing talking point in a shirt. But anyway.
Well, it helps that conservatives aren't funny. There's
also that. Here's the thing. I did try conservative comedy, right? I tried the Blue Collar Comedy Tour. I tried Rodney Carrington. I tried people like that, but they're just so terribly fucking unfunny. It hurts. Funny. Like, I went back recently and listened to a Rodney Carrington CD. Not a CD, but I pulled it up on Spotify, right? And I just listened to the first track. And the first track is just like 5 minutes of him doing the ching chong chow making fun of how Chinese people talk thing.
I did that when I was 5 years old or something.
Yeah, they've never grown the fuck out of it. And he literally says, I think one of the jokes he says in that bit is, Chinese people just exist for me to make fun of. Like, that wasn't fucking funny. There was no fucking effort put into that. That's just lazy bullshit.
Have you seen Gutfeld?
Oh, God. I have.
With an exclamation mark? Gutfeld!
Like you're supposed to be excited when you hear it.
God, it's so bad.
It's just awful. And man, I own several Greg Gutfeld books, right? Because this is the shit I read. This is the shit I read. I have one that I bought back when I was a right-winger, and I still have it, right? I don't throw books away. I'm one of those people who collects all the books I've ever bought. And then since, we've started doing this sort of stuff, I purchased another one of his books just for, possibility for doing on the show. And also because I read books we don't even do on the show because I want to know what the fuck these people are thinking. I want to know what my parents are reading, right? That's part of it as well. But no, they're just terribly unfunny. And I think part of it is because comedy is born out of empathy. It's born out of having a common understanding with the people that you're talking to and knowing how they react to certain things and knowing beyond, anybody can do poop comedy or, shock comedy because they know what reaction they're going to get out of people with that. But to have comedy, anything beyond that, you need to understand people better. And they just plainly don't.
Yeah, I've heard other comedians say something like that. So I think that's pretty true. I wanted to circle back around, before we run out of time. So, some legal challenges have been put forth for Georgia's laws, especially. How much of a chance do you think these kind of court battles have?
I think it depends on the particular provision that we're arguing about, right? So under the Voting Rights Act, the primary test under Section 2 is the disparate impact test, right? Whether the impact of the law is disproportionately protected groups, protected classes. Some of the things, it'll be obvious that that's the case. The water and food in line thing. I think there's a pretty strong case to be made about that. The problem is, and this is going to be our problem going forward, no matter what they're challenging, we now have a court system in the United States that is stacked with the furthest right-wing know-nothings possible, right? I mean, remember multiple times Trump tried to put fucking bloggers into lifetime district court positions for because they wrote a blog post that somebody on his staff liked who had never seen the inside of a courtroom. These people are largely, and there are plenty of people who were qualified technically to go on to be a judge, but I think that their legal thinking should disqualify them entirely. And for the most part, most of them are just political partisan hacks. And it's a massive uphill battle, particularly given that the top court in the land, the Supreme Court of the United States, is now also stacked with right-wing hacks that there's largely no way to get over, right? So, and Joe Manchin's not going to let us do shit we need to do, like Jesus. Put more people on the court.
Unless you kiss his ass all the time. That's what he...
I can't tell you what Joe Manchin wants, to be honest. And I've said the words have come out of my mouth, but they make me vomit every time that, Joe Manchin's the best we're going to get out of West Virginia. I think that's probably true.
Which is sad because that's where the coal miners' strike was, back in the
man.
day or whatever.
But you know what? And here's another thing, right? As someone who's been in, blue collar work, 5 years as a mechanic, been around those sorts of people, had that mindset myself. I was in a non-union shop where I was getting paid much less than people I knew who worked over at the Caterpillar dealership and the John Deere dealership who were in union shops. I was making much less money. But in my mind, I was so indoctrinated into the political ideology of American right-wing thought that unions were evil. Even if they benefited me, even if I could see the clear benefits of more days off, better pay, better benefits, I didn't want it because my brain started screaming socialism, because that's what it's all built into. And beyond that, right, this is the right wing plays on culture war. It's all they have. Like I talked about a little bit earlier, they don't have policy. They don't have a governance strategy. They just have culture war. All they have is piss off the libs. It's really all they have. And their side has bought deeply into that. I bought deeply into that in my youth. And so all the things, even though I grew up in a relatively religiously moderate household, a Catholic household in California, I was out there, not screaming literally, but screaming to anyone who would listen about how abortion was the biggest evil and all this other various shit that goes along with the right-wing thought, right? Socialism, socialism, socialism. The left's coming to take our guns, even though I didn't own a gun. I did eventually buy a gun, but I didn't. For the majority of the time, I was screaming about how they're going to come take our guns. All that sort of stuff. It's all what the right's about now because it's all they have to cling on to, and we don't need to fight them on that. We need to fight them on good policy. But sadly, I think many of those same people who would be most benefited by left-wing policies are against those very same policies because they bought into the bill of goods that the right has sold them.
Yeah, and I think people always, of course, this is a common, why the fuck do they keep voting against their own best self-interest? Well, that's it right there. They've been indoctrinated with this ideology for so long that anything that even smacks a little bit of like socialism, I guess, they just lose their shit and they can't have it, even if it will benefit them materially.
Yeah,
they just won't do it.
Yeah, it's sad, man. It's sad. I had a guy, a old friend of mine I used to work with before I was even a real mechanic. When I was in high school, I worked at a junkyard in Sacramento. And one of the guys I worked with there was here illegally. He was a guy from Mexico. He wasn't in the country legally. I look back now, I go to his Facebook. He's a Trump supporter. He's one of the people Trump wants to kick out of the country, and he's posting more pro-Trump stuff than anybody I know. So you get as close as you can to against your own self-interest, right? Despite the fact that he's can't vote, people go against their own self-interests for a lot of reasons, and for a lot of people, it's because they're more about one issue than anything else, right? We got a lot of people who their one issue is abortion. We got a lot of people who their one issue is make Jesus the national animal. We got a lot of people whose one issue is fuck socialism, right?
Yeah.
These vaguely defined, often inarticulable ideas that aren't really policy plans or anything other than get rid of all the stuff I don't like and fuck the libs. It's what a lot of the right is about these days.
Well, so in summary, you think how these things are ruled on as far as Georgia laws and such depend a lot on the judges that are hearing them?
Luck.
These cases?
I think it's a lot about luck. I think there's some things in there that are much more likely to be struck down than others. I think like I said, a lot of the problem goes back to 2016. Shelby County v. Holder struck down the pre-clearance requirement for all the South. Yeah. So they didn't have to go to the DOJ and say, hey, we want to fuck over all our black people. Is that okay? And the DOJ could say no. Now they could just do it.
As soon as they fucking repealed that, they fucking were waiting. Texas was waiting.
The minute
they fucking repealed it, they started passing those. That's what really. And John Roberts said, "Well, racism's not a thing anymore." I don't think.
Yep. That's the case.
Oh, really, white man? Please do tell.
But I think the big part is a lot of these are likely to be battles that make it, if not just to the Court of Appeals, all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. And I'm not happy about our prospects there looking forward.
Well, and strategically, I think that it was a dumb move that they did it right after the last election, because that gives us time to it worked through the courts before the next election. They'd have been better off doing this shit just before the election so that they, mess around. Well, it's too late now,
Yeah. Honestly, I think the best remedy is to take over those states. That's might be the best thing we can do. And in which case, the big thing is ground game. Donate to organizations like Stacey Abrams' several of the organizations she's worked with in the past that do great work at getting people to the polls, making sure they actually vote. Any organization that does work like that, they're going to be doing a lot. There are high-powered lawyers that are handling all the challenges for these. Mark Elias, who's a massive voting attorney, who basically handles all of the challenges to Republican laws these days. He's out there trying to win these cases, and I hope he has good luck. But I always like to stay as least optimistic as possible when I see an uphill challenge like this. I didn't think we would win Georgia. I told everyone I knew I didn't think we would win the Senate in Georgia, and then it happened, and I got to be happy because before that I was putting myself in a place where I could be excited if it happened.
Right. Yeah. If you think bad shit will happen, you'll never be disappointed.
Yep.
If you always think bad shit's gonna happen. Well, I hope. I don't know. Like you said, taking back Georgia is in a special position because Atlanta, basically.
Yep.
It's so fucking big, and the suburbs are more white people basically are moving out of the suburbs, and they're spreading into the outer counties, and that's what's starting to tip things in that state. And there's a couple other blue. Like, I think Athens, college towns, there's a couple other cities that are blue-ish. But I think Atlanta and the surrounding counties, and of course it's taken years before this has happened, of course. And let's be honest, gentrification has played a part in this. White people have come in, as they always do, and fucking make it beautiful. AKA they look the same as everywhere else. And This is what's happened in Nashville, right? This kind of shit's already starting to happen. And the key is getting those outer counties. Getting these fucking liberals to live in these, because you can't afford to live in fucking Nashville proper anymore, God forbid.
Well, if I can put forward a little bit of good news to end the show, right? All the studies show that the Republican Party is dying, literally. The Republican Party remains the party of people in their 60s plus. That is their largest demographic, and that group of people is dying. And all of the younger demographics skew heavily towards the left. So they are literally being replaced. Maybe this is what Tucker Carlson has been screaming about. The great replacement. Yeah. But we give it enough time. Right. Hopefully we see that change.
Because look at fuck me. They're all old. There's so many old people. And I mean, like, dirt old. If you see some of these people, they're barely moving around. I don't know what animates them except like hating Confederacy heritage shit. I don't know what's happening, but they're still alive, but they're not going to be for much longer. So you're right. That is a bit of a hope, Hopefully you're right, but the South has a history of taking their time to do any fucking thing.
Okay. I thought you were going to say a history of rising again. So
new. Although if after Reconstruction, if you want to say they did rise again after the Redeemers took over after, the federal troops left and betrayed the black people of the South. But that's
all I will say is it's your heritage to rise again. It is my heritage to burn down Atlanta. So Northern heritage. I think Northern heritage trumps. Oh God, I hate using that phrase now.
He's ruined it. Yes, you can't say anything. You can't say that shit anymore. Hey, don't burn Atlanta now. There's black people there.
No, we'll just burn the suburbs. We'll just burn the suburbs.
No, they're voting. No, get the rural counties. Saying Antifa.
Well, you can send me a map. You can send me a map.
I'll send you a map. They did think Antifa was coming after him.
Yes, they did. By the way, I am fully. Well, I'm not fully. I got my first vaccine shot today, so I'm excited to turn into an Antifa super soldier. I expect that transformation to be happening over the next few days, as I undergo what apparently Steve Rogers did. That's what I'm hopeful for.
Yeah, super soldier serum. Yeah, I got my second about a week ago. So Cinco de Mayo is my 2 weeks.
Man, it's happy days. Happy days. Everyone should be getting vaccinated.
I don't know. I'll have to be comatose because I'm like 40 now, 46. If I drink too much, I'm basically just comatose for 2 days. I might as well have COVID at that point,
Well, but at least you can go be comatose in public now.
Even then, and I will say this, I think I will wear a mask because this is not going. It's going to be like the flu, basically. You're going to have to get shot every year or something. Obviously, it's more deadly than the flu, but I'm saying the idea of getting the shot every year because it mutates and all that kind of good shit. But if you wearing the mask keeps you from getting other shit too. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I love not having the flu or a cold or I mean, allergies not so much maybe, but it blocks some of that stuff, some pollen maybe. So I mean, why not?
I mean, I hope that we continue or that we transition into sort of similar to how they do it in Asia, where most people don't wear masks on a day-to-day basis, but if it's smoggy outside or if you have a cold or you have something you feel like is coming on, you wear a mask for the consideration of others so you don't spread anything to them. I hope we move on to something like that and people start thinking a little bit more about other people.
You're in the wrong country, buddy.
Yeah, I know that's the case.
We're the most selfish fucking. We're built on for ourselves. Yeah. They want to pay taxes. They fucking did a revolution just because they didn't fucking pay tax. Rich white people didn't want to pay taxes.
And people don't want to pay taxes now. They stormed the Capitol building, I guess.
And all those fuckers are middle class and upper middle class. That's what kills me.
I mean, there's a smattering of,
Well, yeah, but for the most part, they're like.
There were a lot of people who are much wealthier than you'd expect for be doing shit like that. And that's probably our biases, right? That's our biases. We're biased to think that it's low class, as we call them, people who would do this kind of shit. And so it should make us rethink who's out there doing that kind of stuff. Who's out there assaulting our Capitol building and trying to the actual
lower class. And I'm talking about people who are scraping by day to day. Yeah. They don't have time to fucking worry about shit like that. Yep. They're worried about where they're getting their next fucking meal. Right? Yep. These are the people with no teeth, and I will fucking kill you if anybody talks shit about bad teeth because it's expensive to get your teeth fixed. I have fucked up teeth.
It's more expensive to not get your teeth fixed. That's a fucking thing, right? My whole life, I've had dental care. I have, my parents I grew up on a gated golf course community, right? My parents have some money. I've always had good dental care my entire life. But the thing that it comes to is if you can't afford to fix a cavity, eventually that tooth's going to have to get pulled out. That's going to be more expensive. Then maybe you want to get that taken care of. You got a fake tooth. That's even more expensive to get that done, right? If you aren't able to go and get regular dental care from a professional, you're going to end up getting more cavities, right? You can't afford that $50 to go in and get your teeth cleaned and polished. You're going to get cavities. You're going to get all sorts of issues. It ends up being more expensive in the long run, right?
Yeah, well, they're not going to be able to afford it. And they don't have any, literally, a lot of people don't have any teeth. And the thing they make fun of, it has a lot to do with poverty.
Yeah.
And they don't, I mean, it's funny. It's not funny, but it's just to see, like, the fucks they give about shit like that. And, like, they're, talking about miscegenation, but black people, they're all fucking, they don't fucking care. They don't have time, man. All the poor people, if that's what they're afraid of, they don't want poor people to fucking actually get anything because all of a sudden they'll realize they're getting fucked. But anyway, that's a whole other issue.
I don't know. I'm just saying universal dental care. That's my pitch.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't think even Canada has that, to be honest.
I don't know. Would be a good thing. Would be a damn good thing.
All right, dude. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer. But
I got to go watch the President of the United States. Actually, I'm not going to watch that. I'm just going to watch the response because that's the stuff I find fun.
Tonight?
It's tonight. It's tonight. It's going on right now. So we'll see how well crafted these Republican responses to that socialist Biden are.
I want to see the furthest right one. That'll be the best.
Well, I know Tim Scott's going, and then I'm sure every bumblefuck in the Republican Party is going to be doing their own independent one in preparation for their run in 2024.
Gates. Well,
Matt Gates, my boy.
He's got no fucking
I'm very sad he's never written a book because we would definitely have done it.
There is a Twitter feed that is just him, some dude, and he makes his forehead big.
Makes him look like Butthead?
Yeah, he just makes his forehead, and that's all of it. He'll put his face he'll deep fake it into different shit. That's his whole Twitter feed. And it's fucking
That
great.
sounds like the sort of thing I would subscribe to.
Yeah, he's great. So, I mean, yeah, I don't know what the response. I want the best response, which is to say the worst one.
Yeah.
That's the one I want. All right, so go ahead and plug your pluggables.
Well, if people like the sound of these dulcet tones, this creamy as milk voice, this beautiful
All right,
caramel
let's talk
dulcet tones. I used dulcet already. I can't reuse
Yeah,
that.
you
Anyways,
can,
you can find us over at the Not Your Grandmother's Book Club podcast. We have a new episode every week. We do new book reviews every other week. In between, we have interstitial episodes where we find random opinion pieces or very often PragerU videos that we break down to look at all the insanity that's going on there.
James Lindsay just did one.
Yes, and we are definitely doing it.
Okay, well,
Definitely doing it.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
I forgot to respond to your Twitter. But anyways, yeah, okay, we'll see. But you can find us over there searching wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all the places, the Spotifys and the Tunes and the Helpers and I don't know what they're all called. You can, of course, also follow us on social media at NYGBC Pod. So go find us over there and learn more and come learn with us as we go through the wide wilderness of right-wing thought. It's a whole lot of fun.
And learn is like the operative word.
Learn is very sarcastic. I know I sound sarcastic naturally. So yeah, it's that's why I have to do it. It doesn't work much for audio medium when me and Benedict do the show. But yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on. Say hi to Benedict for me.
Will do.
And take care of yourself. And I guess until next time.
Till next time.
Y'all take it easy now, okay?